Hello and welcome. If you're like me and prefer to recognize each word at a slower rate, you can do so by clicking on the settings icon at the bottom of the screen, and it'll give you the ability to slow down the video. If you choose to do so, you will realize that this is not created by AI, but instead by a real person who actually cares about your well-being. To protect you, I need to inform you that if you falsely claim this information is your own, I will quickly get you to recognize your negative actions by going public. Please stop and think. I have infinite ways of showing this is not your original intellectual property. The Son of Man once said, "Who for putting away lying, speak every man truth with his neighbor, for we are members of one another." Okay, let's get to the fun part. The world considers the Collatz conjecture to be the simplest equation that nobody can solve, or at least not until now. It has been considered to be so difficult that there is a prize offered of 120 million Japanese yen if anyone can reveal the truth within the Collatz conjecture. But if you've been following my channel, you know that I have continually stated, we solve all the problems of the world simply by recognizing the negative, finding the positive hidden within, allowing the negative to recognize itself, and then all things become positive. So please allow me to demonstrate how we apply that statement to solve the Collatz conjecture. From this point forward, we will think of it as 3x plus 1. Now, before we proceed, we must remember, mathematics is a language within living science where problems and theory come from the discipline itself. Now, the conjecture itself can be explained so simply that even a child can understand. After all, Son of Man said, "I tell you the truth. Unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, and whoever welcomes a little child like this in my name welcomes me." So please allow me to explain in a way that a child would understand. And I will do this by telling it as a story problem. And the story goes like this. If we start with natural numbers, example 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and if it is an even number, we divide it by 2, or if the number is odd, we multiply it by 3 and add 1. According to the conjecture, you will always end up with the number 1. But a child would ask, where did the 1 come from? And we would reply that the 1 is just imaginary. Now the child would look confused, so we can simplify the equation by identifying the added 1 as imaginary to allow the child's mind to relax. So now let's look at the even numbers. If we divide 2 by itself, it equals 1. If we divide 4 by 2, we get to 2 with the remainder of 2. And we already know that 2 reduces to 1. So we know that the statement is telling the truth so far. But now notice what happens to the even number 6. As soon as we divide it by 2, it becomes a 3. And the equation begins to get chaotic. Now we know that the only way we can proceed is by adding the imaginary 1 to the equation to end the chaos. As a child's mind starts to get confused, we decide to represent the added 1 as I for imaginary. Then we tell the story about the chaos theory, which is also called the three-body problem. And the theory also adds an imaginary 1 to end the chaos. And that is expressed as xn plus I equals rxn plus rxn. But now the child's mind is still confused. So we can simply explain it as all odd numbers or even numbers that are related to odd numbers eventually become non-truthful. Therefore, we add the I to make them tell the truth, considering it as the I to end the lying. Now the child begins to smile and asks, then why did it say to divide all even numbers by 2? When 6 is even but it lies. And we explain, because someone forgot to reflect on back to ancient Greek mathematics, because that reminds us of the difference between evenly even, doubly even, oddly even, and singly even. The truth is, all odd numbers, oddly even, and singly even are in a state of chaos. And the only way we can end that state of chaos is by adding the imaginary one, the I. So we explain it as odd numbers can be looked at as an even number with an I added to it. Example, 5 is 4 plus I. Therefore, if you add 2 odd numbers together, we're truly adding an even number to an even number, then adding I 2 times, showing it as I plus I equals 2, or I squared equals 2. So to simplify, we agree to represent it as I squared equals even. Then the child's mind starts to relax, but then says, how do we get it to tell the truth? If we have 2 lies, and we explain, the only way a lie can be forgiven is by first getting to the root of the problem. And we show that as the square root of I equals -1. And then once it recognizes itself to be imaginary, the lie can be forgiven, and we do that by showing the square root of -1. But since some of the numbers might have had relatives that lied, we need to check all the ancestors of numbers. So the way we find the absolute of a number of lies is we must get to the root of the problem, and then we can recognize the negative. Therefore, we have square root of -1 plus the square root of -1 equals the square root of -1 squared, and the square root of square root -1 equals absolute truth if we subtract the I. And now we can see all the lies. The child smiles and says, can we solve the problem now? We wink and say, yes, we can, if we recognize the -1 is in a state of innocence because it has not learned that the mind has lies within, and the 2, it does not lie because it recognizes the innocent one within. So then we have 3. And the 3 is not innocent because it had the opportunity to recognize the negative, but it failed to do so. So we must look within the 3, and we do that by dividing it by x. And when we show that as 3 divided by x, but now we want to find all of the lies in its history, so we divide it again. And that gives us 3x, 3 divided by x divided. Now all we have to do is run it through our absolute truth equation. So now we have 3 divided by x divided by the square root of the square root of -1 equals I. And in order to remove the lies, We get the I to recognize itself. Now we have 3 divided by x divided by the square root of -1 squared. Without the lie in the equation equals 0. The child gets a big smile on their face and says, "But Father, doesn't that mean that 0 is the Holy Spirit? Number 1 is when we become a soul. Number 2 is when God made our parents. Number 3 is when we are born with a lie to teach us. Number 4 is when we make a baby. Number 5 is when that baby is born. Number 6 is when we realize that we are both good and bad, but do not do anything about it. Number 7 is when the special one is sent to teach us that the lies are not real. Number 8 is the soul connects with the Holy Spirit. Number 9 is when the process is complete and the Father gives a child a big hug and says, "I'm so proud of you because you just figured out how to solve all the problems of the world by first recognizing the negative, finding the positive within the negative, allowing the negative to recognize itself, and then all things become positive." The child gets super happy and says, "Yay, we just solved the Collatz conjecture, the 3-body problem, and all the problems in psychology. And we just recognized the Holy Spirit within is real." Then the child gets a scared look on her face and asks, "But what number am I?" And he answers, "My child, because of what we have just learned, we are now at number 7. And all you need to do is recognize the negative within your mind." The child embraces her father and asks, "Aren't you afraid of what people might do once they find out?" He answers, "Only people we can trust will be shown. And only the ones with the Holy Spirit within will know how to utilize the information." Then you ask, "What proof do you have that the Holy Spirit exists for real?" And my response is, simply Google the history of the number 0, and then recognize how the history of number 0 runs linear to the history of religion. Please take the time to check for the truths in what I've just told you. Simply Google the numbers between 0 and 9 individually. For example, if you type in only the number 1 and then with the words "in the Bible" and hit enter, read what comes up, and then realize I solved and made this video in one day just simply after meditating. I haven't done any mathematics in over 20 years, and honestly, I had to look up how to even do it. I just knew what the truth was. I simply decided to stop lying to myself. I'm nothing special. I only found the positive within me. The truth is, I never existed, only we, and you will realize that as soon as you choose to find the special one inside you. And if I do not receive a response from you in 3 days, then I will move on to someone that's willing to listen. But I appreciate your time. I love you, and I hope to see you soon.